you earlier last week. To preface all of this, a lot of this discussion we just had, this exchange, I think points to some of the ongoing drafting concerns that some of us have with the language in the interlocal agreement, the privacy policy, where I think some of the confusion arises because there's, based on some review I've done with some folks, that there's some inconsistent use of certain terms or umbrella terms, and it creates certain perceptions that there might be gaps such that were mentioned there, and I think maybe tightening up the language on some of those just in general, as a general point, might be a good idea. My first major question, though, is that, again, what the council votes on is the interlocal agreement, and that's really what's critical here. The privacy policy certainly fleshes out everything, and that's incorporated within the interlocal agreement. The interlocal agreement establishes the major framework, so I think that's where we should all start looking. In section 1 of the interlocal agreement, right there at the very beginning, there's very clear language that says that the interlocal agreement and incorporated policies such as the privacy policy do not create any third-party remedy against any entity, agency, or participating government entity in the fusion center. Now, as attorneys, you and I both know that there's many statutes and laws, some which create causes of action, create legal remedies, and some which don't. And those that don't have causes of action and don't have legal remedies are typically in practice very difficult to enforce, because when violations are discovered, there really is no remedy. Now, my understanding of the way it's written now, and my understanding of how this area of the law works, is that we could have a limousine privacy policy, a limousine interlocal agreement as far as protection of civil liberties, balancing all of these issues, and ensuring that we both allow law enforcement to do their job effectively and protect the concerns of citizens. But if that agreement, if those policies are violated in any way, would anybody have a cause of action to actually sue for enforcement or for damages?
Well, I think to clarify that the interlocal is not in itself creating a new entity, and it's not waiving, the document is not waiving the individual agency's immunity for certain situations. Causes of action still exist for individual agencies. And there are going to be no employees specifically of ARIC alone. There will be employees of individual agencies. So if there is a cause of action, it will still exist against the individual agencies.
Okay, I'm a little confused by that, because there seems to be a section in the interlocal agreement. Unfortunately, I don't have a copy of it right in front of me. It doesn't look like any of us got a copy of that for today. I know that there's a language in there that provides for the hiring of ARIC analysts by the city director to work specifically in the ARIC. So that sounds to me like employees that are not employees of any partner agency.
There shouldn't be, any analysts hired through ARIC will be employees of the city of Austin, or the other agencies have agreed to hire analysts specifically for this island.
Okay, well let me pose this question then as maybe a hypothetical here. So let's say someone working in the ARIC, some individual employee, is discovered to have compromised the privacy of someone, resulting in some kind of damages, such as by exposing personal health or financial information in a damaging manner. Well, whom would that person sue? I mean, would it be the partner, would be just that agency itself, or since the city of Austin and APD are really the overseers, the recipients of the grant specifically, would we as a city also end up being liable or potentially liable for at least legal costs, if not for damages?
I don't know how to answer that question at this point in time. I'd have to look into it, but
okay.
I'm sorry.
As a non-practicing lawyer, what happens is a lawyer sues everybody that breathes, so I don't think that's really a critical issue.
I do.
Right.
I do.
Well, it is a critical issue, but the fact of the matter is, everybody will be sued, and the law and the courts will sort it out.
Why can't you do it now and before it happens?
Okay, so moving on to Privacy Policy Advisory Committee, which is discussed in both the interlocal agreement and the privacy policy. First of all, my understanding of that exchange just previously makes it sound like the privacy policy itself is going to be undergoing continuous change even after the interlocal agreement is adopted. Is that correct?
It's scheduled to go for an annual review to make sure it's consistent with current law and is doing its job, really.
Now, if the privacy policy is being incorporated into the interlocal agreement itself, then wouldn't any change in the privacy policy constitute a change in the underlying interlocal agreement?
The way that we've drafted it, it will not. I am going to make it a little more explicit because it does need to be explicit, this is a living document.
Okay, so what you're saying then is that what the city council passes as far as the interlocal agreement and the privacy policy at the time could potentially change at any point in the future, particularly the privacy policy itself.
Absolutely, that's the hope. That I don't think initially we started off that we wanted to make it a very firm privacy policy, but I think what we've gotten and what the feedback we've received is that we need to make it an ongoing process and need to make it more of a living document.
Okay, is there any objection from any, agencies such as DHS, et cetera, that we need to get approval from? Are there any legal problems with changing the way the Privacy Policy Advisory Committee is comprised in the agreement to, instead of being appointed by the, I believe, the operational management team, to have it be a multi-faceted independent commission that has appointees from both this commission, the city council, and members of the area?
Yeah, this was wholly a creation of our city, and we fully expected to get feedback as to who's going to be on it, who's going to be choosing that kind of thing.
Okay, so is there any reason why we couldn't wait until all of that is fleshed out before having this, recommending to the council that they adopt this agreement?
Yeah,
Only in the way that we have it structured, we have the commission, the committee, in the interlocal agreement. I mean, just as a drafting concern, I could take it out and put it in the privacy policy. That way, it wouldn't happen.
Okay, I think that, at least this member of the commission would love to see the specifics on that before we make any recommendations.
It was something we did want to have in front of council so that they were aware that that organization exists, that idea, but.
Okay. Let's move on to external audit language. Now, there is a lot of discussion throughout the policy and the interlocal agreement about the possibility of having some type of semi-regular audit, and I know Chief Carter spoke to that. I think that's a really great starting point. I'm really happy to see that everyone's on board with that, and I appreciate, again, the chief and all of the city staff working with us on that. My concern here, again, is similar to the privacy policy, is that it seems like this is a really critical issue. For most of us who are looking at this thing, who might say, well, okay, let's say we have these great private protections. Well, it's really hard for any citizen on a regular basis to actually know about any violation that might be occurring, because we don't get a inside track. I mean, nor would we normally expect that, right? I mean, these involve critical criminal investigations that might be going on, so obviously the public isn't going to have access to every piece of information in the area. But this external audit seems to be one of the few controls where somebody gets to have, from the outside, gets to look inside the box, right? So again, similar to the privacy committee, is there any reason why we can't have that fleshed out fully first before we have this approval, this agreement approved?
Yes.
Why not?
The external audit process is one that we started that discussion. There's two kinds. There's an internal audit that most